All right, in this video, we're going to be talking about the arithmetic sequence word problems. And so I made a little note here on the bottom that says you may need to switch to, or you may need to watch the first video, which is the arithmetic sequence non-word video. So the non-word problem video, that is kind of more of a foundation of what we're doing. So this is kind of like part two, if you want to call it that. All right, so here we go. Let's go and dive into the word problems. So again, you're looking at the sequence that we're always going to use. So we're always going to use this particular sequence. All right, so for this particular question, so let me kind of write some stuff down. Just so, all right, so remember it starts with T of n. Technically, it's always A of n, and so just T and A can be uh, back and forth. All right, so question number one. Now, a lot of the times when you're reading this, you need to pay attention to the wording because it's going to help you out tremendously. So it says, like, for example, question number one, an auditorium that has 24 seats in the front row. All right, so 24 seats in the front row. Whenever you see, like, front, whenever you see that word or first, that's always going to be your A1. Okay, so your A1 is always going to be, wording of like first and front or before, just something that indicates first. So your A1 ends up being 24. Okay, now I went ahead and gave you a chart over here just to kind of help you out and so you can see the problem. And if you keep reading, it says each row moving back towards the auditorium has two additional seats. So if the first row has 24, the next row will have 26, next row will have 28, next row will have 30, next row will have 32. So what's happening is you're adding 2 every single time. So since I'm adding 2 every single time, my common difference is going to be 2. All right, so I'm adding 2. Now, if you remember, going back to our default formula, which is right here, all you need to know is your first term and your common difference. That's all you need to know. And look, this question already gave us the first term and the difference. So to find the closed form formula, just like we did in the last video, we're going to go ahead and put that information. So the first term ends up being 24. The second term, or I'm sorry, not the second term, but the common difference ends up being n. So we just take this and we just plug it in. All right, so 24 plus 2n minus 2. My answer is 2n plus 22. That's it. Now, the recursive formula, this is the formula that everyone tends to forget because they're so focused on closed form. Recursive, remember, guys, it is what are you doing to the previous number to get to the next number. All right? So in this problem, it's always going to start, an minus 1, something. If you look at our sequence, I'm adding 2 every single time. So I'm just going to say, oh, that's plus 2. There we go. Now, for this question here, it says, if the last row has 96 seats, how many rows are in the auditorium? Well, this is kind of like a throwaway question. So you're going to take 96, which is right here, and you already have your formula, which is 2n plus 22. What we want to know is what does n have to be in order for it to be 96? All right, so what does n have to be for it to be 96? And I just use algebra and it ends up being 37. So 96 minus 22, yep, that's 37. All right, so moving on. All right, for question number 3, we skipped around a little bit, but it says your father wants you to help him build a shed in the backyard. Now let's read what the question's asking. He agreed to pay you $10 for the, here we go, first hour. All right, so $10 for the first hour. So right then and there, I know that my first term is going to be 10. And he is going to pay you an additional $15 thereafter. So an additional 10. So that means my common difference ends up being 10. Oh, I'm sorry, it ends up being 15. So the first 2 blanks are already filled out for us. Then to find the closed form, this is very similar to what we just did. A of n something plus something, n minus 1. All right, so first term was 10, 15. I'm going to distribute. I'm going to speed up a little bit just because this is now starting to become repetition here. So it ends up being 15n minus 5. All right. Now the recursive formula. Now remember, recursive is something that should literally take you a second. What are you doing each and every time? You're adding 10. Oh, I'm sorry, you're adding 15. So it's going to be an minus 1 plus 15. And it said the shed took 50 hours to complete. How much money did you make? All right. So the shed took about 50 hours to complete, so I had to pause the video. So, all right, how much money should you make? All right, so this one again, you're using the formula 15n minus 5. You're going to take 50, you're going to plug it in for n this time because you're looking for how many hours. So 15 times 50 minus 5 gives you 745. All right. All right, so let's keep going here. Now we're just going to kind of skip around a little bit just because I want to. There we go. All right, so question number 4. All right, it says, question number 4, you visit the Grand Canyon and drop a penny off the edge of a cliff. The distance the penny will fall is 16 feet. Here we go. 16 feet the first second. So the first second right here, A of 1 is 16. If you keep reading, now it's 48 feet for second 2. So A of 2 is 48. And then A of 3 is 80. All right. So you have your first 3 terms. You have 16, which is your first term, which is 16. And then if you notice, your second term is 48 and then 80. So if I'm trying to find what my common distance is, just by looking at this, let's see. It looks like I'm increasing 32 every single time. All right. So for the closed form formula, again, A of n something plus something n minus 1. So my first term ends up being 16. This ends up being 32. Again, distribute. You're going to get 32n minus 16 for your overall closed form formula. The recursive, you're adding 32 every single time. A of n minus 1 plus 32. What is the total distance the object will fall in 6 seconds? Again, using your formula here, minus 16, you're going to take 6, plug it in for n. And so 32 times 6 minus 16 gives you 176. Okay? Now, the last one we're going to go over is probably by far the most challenging one, and that is question number 2. So we're kind of jumping around a little bit. So question number 2, it says John's dad has a job for him to do. The way that the job is set up, John will get paid more to start the job than he'll get paid his normal hourly rate. Here we go. After 3 hours of work, John will get paid 55 bucks. So A of 3 is 55. After 6 hours of work, he'll get paid 100 bucks. So you're not given your first term, you're not given your common difference. So you have got to first find your common difference. All right? So to find your common difference, remember that it's the later term minus the early term. That's the first thing you do. And then you're going to divide by your increase. All right? So the later term is the term that's later in the sequence, which in this case is 100, minus the early term, which is 55, okay, which gives me 45. Then it says you're going to divide by the n increase. Now, what that means is you're on the third term, now you're on the sixth term. So that means you increased by 3, which means you're going to divide by 3. So my common difference is 15. There we go, okay? Now, with that being said, I got to erase a little bit, so you might have to back up in the video so you can see this again. So since I know my common difference is now 15, my formula is A of n something plus something n minus 1. Well, my 15 is my common difference. But I need to find my first term. Now, in order to do that, you get to choose. Do you want to use 55 or do you want to use 100 for this next part? It's totally up to you. It doesn't matter. All right, so eeny, meeny, miny, mo, we are going to choose 55. So we're going to take 55, plug it in for A of n, 3, plug it in for n. And this is how we find our first term. So 55 is equal to x plus 15, 3 minus 1, 55 equals x plus, this ends up being 30. So when I subtract, my first term ends up being 25. So there we go. There's 25. And since I know what my common difference is, since I know what my first term is, then I can go ahead and create my closed form formula. All right, so again, you might have to rewind a little bit so you can watch what I did, because I have to erase to have some room to write. So now that I have my first term in my common difference, now it's time for me to plug everything in. My first term is 25. My common difference is 15. Distribute all that mess in there. I'm left with 15n plus 1, plus 10. And then lastly, the recursive formula. We did all that work, and the recursive formula takes a second. What are you doing every single time? All I'm doing is adding 15 every single hour. So that means it's going to be a of n minus 1 plus 15. All right, so there you go. So hopefully you learned what's going on with word problems. Like I said before at the beginning of the video, you might have to go back and watch the arithmetic sequence non-word video just to kind of give you an overall foundation of what we're doing today. Well, anyway, hope you have a good day. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.